All right, thanks everybody. I'm Jonathan Kaplan. I'm the CTO of PowWow Mobile, and thanks for coming to hear about bridging the app gap. So start with standard disclaimers, and then we can dive into it. So hopefully it's not too controversial to talk about the role of mobile apps in business. But I think it's important to think about their role in terms of fueling innovation in the workplace. If you think about business applications dividing up into kind of two broad categories, one is systems of record, right? These are your Oracles and SAPs of the world. These are all the things that store your data, they deal with compliance. They don't change very much. And in fact, if you look at these kind of systems, the average lifespan of these systems can be something like 18 or 20 years. On the other hand, on the other side, you have your systems of engagement. And these are what your end users are actually using. And one thing your end users don't necessarily like is using 18 or 20-year-old software. And so, a great strategy is to think about how can you keep your systems of record stable while innovating in your systems of engagement. And so over that 18 to 20 years that you've had an Oracle installation, for example, your systems of engagement have changed pretty rapidly, right? First it was maybe a Windows native app, then it was a web app, now it's mobile apps, and users are already starting to ask about new kinds of engagement, things like chatbots and voice-based assistants, things like that. And so really the innovation is happening in these systems of engagement. So what is the app gap, right, that we're talking about, and how does that relate to these different systems? So on the one hand, on the one side, we have our mobile infrastructure. And mobile infrastructure, since we're all good VMware customers, things like AirWatch for security, AppTelligent for monitoring, Workspace ONE for managing all of our mobile interactions. We spend a lot of time and effort setting these things up. On the other side, we have our mobile users. And they're there, they have their devices, they're excited to be using mobile applications for their daily lives. All the statistics show that they do almost all of their interactions today on mobile devices. So they really, there's really demand for using, for making systems available to mobile users. And in the middle, what bridges this gap is the business apps. The problem is, if you look at most enterprises, these business apps are largely missing, right? If you look at the numbers, the average enterprise has on the order of hundreds to thousands of internal applications, especially as you get to larger enterprises. But the number of mobile apps that they've deployed is somewhere around 7. So you think about all those thousands of applications that exist that people are using that have not been made available in any other context. And so why haven't enterprises mobilized a number of their core business systems, right? There's obviously user demand for it. This is what users are asking for. And there are a few key reasons, right? One is we talked about these systems of record, they don't change, right? It's very complicated, expensive to change them. So these legacy systems really hold you back. The second is time and cost. This one's obvious, right? Developing new apps, replacing your apps, it's expensive. Takes a long time. And even when we do it, enterprise mobile apps don't exactly have a great reputation, right? People are not super excited about the kind of mobile apps that enterprises tend to build. And then finally, and I think maybe extremely relevant to this crowd, is the lack of governance, right? So once you deploy those applications, do you have the same kind of control that you used to have over your existing applications? So when we talk about how do we solve the app gap, we want to think about two ideas, right? One is thinking about who creates the apps, right? Because one of the things we know is that we want to enable more apps. Apps are expensive; they take a long time to develop. And so if you look at the spectrum of who develops apps, today we're on that far left side, right? The specialist pro developers, maybe generalist pro developers, people who use HTML5 and JavaScript can maybe build some hybrid applications. And that's really who today's mobile application development platforms are targeted at. But really, if you want to get the large variety of applications that are in an enterprise, you really need to start moving to the right? You just need to start moving towards these technical citizen developers and business citizen developers, right? These are technical people. These are people who are using things like configuring your SharePoint or maybe administering your AirWatch, but they're not necessarily traditional developers. And that's really the target of a rapid mobile application platform. And so let me tell you a little bit about rapid mobile application platforms, in particular about SmartUX, PowWow Mobile's rapid mobile application platform. So there are really 4 key pieces to the rapid mobile application platform. So the first is we have that word rapid. right? And so it's important to have rapid app delivery. So this is allowing different kinds of people to really create a high productivity environment where they can drag and drop to create applications, low code or no code environment. The second is around smart templates, and I'm going a little bit out of order here. So the second is around smart templates, right? This is, again, going back to the fact that it's not traditional developers who are necessarily developing these applications. Templates become incredibly important for building applications because templates are how you get all the things that are common across your organization into these many mobile applications. So for things like your login screens, your help screens, all those things really are common, and there's no need for everybody to build their own versions of that, and in fact, it makes things worse if people do try to build their own versions. So a template system that allows for reuse is important. It also allows you to start with some really great user interfaces that you can create as templates, and that you can then apply to different situations. And again, that improves the user interface of the applications that get developed. Third is the ability to connect to anything. It would be great if we had APIs into every system that we wanted to connect to, and especially APIs that are accessible from mobile. But the reality is we don't. The reality is we have all kinds of systems in all kinds of different states. Some of them provide APIs, but many of them don't. Many of them just provide, for example, a green screen access or a Windows a legacy Windows application or a web application. And we want to be able to connect to anything, and we want to be able to connect from anything. So we want to be able to connect from mobile applications, from chatbots, from voice-based assistants, all these different kinds of interactions. And finally, enterprise control, right? When we release an app, we want to make sure that it meets all of our security and compliance standards. So really, these four pillars are really the core of the Smart UX platform. Because I only have slides, I can't do a demo, so what I'd really like after this talk is for everybody to come by our booth and come see a demo. But for now, what I can tell you is I can tell you a little bit about how Smart UX is built. And then we'd love it if you'd come by the booth and we can show you a little bit more about how it works. So the Smart UX platform, we start with two things. We start with what you have today. And so on the far left, you can see that we have our external data sources, where we have our existing data sources. These are what I talked about when we talked about the systems of record. So these are things like our databases, right? Some of them might just be pure data sources. They might be API access into services. But a lot of them are corporate applications, right? They're applications built on top of Oracle and SAP, or they're cloud applications like Salesforce. And then, even more so, there are custom applications, and these could be pretty much anything that we've built custom for our enterprise. And on the other side, we have all the devices, right? We have mobile devices, we have tablets, we have desktops, we have all these different ways of accessing the applications. And coming out, we have chatbots and we have voice-based assistants and other kinds of new access mechanisms. So how do we bring these things together? So the Smart UX platform really focuses on two different parts of the process, right? The first is design time. So how do you go and create these mobile applications? And we have three parts of our platform for design time. One is a studio, which is a drag and drop system where you can go and create applications, WYSIWYG, go and drag and drop, very easily see what you're doing. And importantly, as part of that is a whole built-in preview system, so that you can unify the work of designers who can go in the same system, can go and create applications that developers can then go and complete. And that's important for cutting down the amount of time it takes to build an application. And then coupled with that, we have a tool called the Smart UX Explorer, which allows you to unify all these different data sources. The Explorer actually lets you bring in different data sources, including things like web apps that don't offer APIs, and bring these into your application. And the way we do this is with our runtime system. And our runtime system is based on a concept of containers. So these different containers are used in our connect layer to connect to all these different data sources. So it's easy to create direct connections to things like REST APIs and databases. But it's more interesting, we have containers that connect to different kinds of existing applications. So things like a web container, which uses a headless web browser to actually load the interface of existing websites. So you don't need to make any modifications to the code of your website. And you can bring this in and expose it as an API that's available to your application. Similarly, we have containers that let you do the same thing for native Windows apps. So even though you have a native Windows app with no APIs, you can run it in a container. We can extract data from the user interface as an API, and you can bring that into your mobile applications. And then similarly for Java applications, for green screen-based applications. So bringing all these different data sources and unifying them into a single mashed up application so that the end user doesn't need to know that the data is coming from multiple data sources. Our runtime also supports a lot of the things that you need, especially for performance, because mobile performance is critical. So a lot of things like user management, caching, replication, high availability, all these are handled by our runtime layer. And then finally, at the mobile app layer, we allow creating lots of different kinds of applications, including very simple apps that take a small slice of a particular system. So I might want one screen from a larger system, all the way up to very large apps that use multiple screens. So with that, I'd like to invite you all to come visit us at booth 336 and get a demo. And I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'll be over on the side after this. Thank you.